Ambassador Haewon Lee stepped off the transport shuttle and looked at the massive station floating in space. The Council Citadel was huge, built by dozens of alien races over thousands of years. Its halls were filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Today, those halls buzzed with fear. Her assistant, a young diplomat named Minsu, walked beside her. "The emergency session starts in 20 minutes, he said quietly. "The Council is desperate," Haewon nodded. She had read the reports during the flight. The Korvax Empire had been conquering worlds at an alarming speed. 3 Council member planets had fallen in just 6 months. Millions of aliens were dead or enslaved. The Council's combined military forces were losing every battle. They entered the Grand Chamber. The room was circular, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Representatives from 40 different species filled the space. Some looked like insects. Others resembled reptiles or birds. A few were just clouds of gas held together by force fields. All of them looked terrified. High Chancellor Voth stood at the center platform. He was a Salkari, a species that looked like walking lizards with 4 arms. His scales were deep purple and his eyes were cold. He had led the Council for 15 years with an iron grip. "Ambassador Lee," Voth said as Haewon took her seat. How convenient that humanity finally decided to attend. Haewon ignored the insult. She had dealt with Voth's attitude for 5 years. The Council had always looked down on humans. Earth had joined the galactic community only 50 years ago. To these ancient civilizations, humans were children playing at politics. The session began. Fleet Marshal Kren, an insectoid Threxian with clicking mandibles, presented the military situation. The news was worse than Haewon had thought. The Korvax Empire now controlled 12 systems. Their fleet had grown to over 300 warships. Council forces were retreating on every front. "We are facing extinction," Kren clicked. "The Korvax will not stop. They will consume us all." Voth raised one of his 4 hands. "Which brings us to the purpose of this emergency session." He turned to face Haewon directly. "We require Earth's military assistance immediately." The chamber fell silent. Every alien eye turned toward the human ambassador. Haewon stood slowly. "High Chancellor, Earth has made its position clear since we joined the Council. We are here for trade and cultural exchange. We will not involve ourselves in galactic politics or military conflicts." Voth's scales darkened with anger. "You have an obligation as Council members to defend civilization itself." "We have an obligation to our own people," Haewon replied calmly. "Earth warned the Council repeatedly not to drag us into your wars. Those warnings were given before we even signed the membership treaty." A feline-looking alien named Nira stood. She was from the Velrothi species and had always been kind to humans. "Ambassador Lee speaks truth. The humans made their position clear from the beginning. We cannot demand they break their own laws." "Their laws?" Voth hissed. "Civilization is burning. We need every ship, every soldier. The humans have a fleet. They have warriors. They will contribute or face consequences." Haewon felt her jaw tighten. She had expected this. The Council always believed it could force others to follow its will. "What consequences, High Chancellor?" Voth smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Economic sanctions. Closed trade routes. Isolation from the galactic community. Perhaps even expulsion from the Council." Other representatives began shouting their support. A bird-like alien screeched about duty. A crystalline being chimed about shared responsibility. Only Nira and a handful of others remained quiet. Haewon waited for the noise to die down. When she spoke, her voice carried across the chamber. "The Council faces this crisis because of your own actions. For decades, you ignored warnings about the Korvax Empire. You dismissed their military buildup as insignificant. You refused to prepare adequate defenses because you believed your ancient superiority would protect you." "How dare you?" Voth started. "I'm not finished," Haewon cut him off. "Earth offered to share our military training programs 5 years ago. The Council refused, saying humans were too violent and uncivilized. We offered to help modernize your fleet tactics. The Council said our methods were barbaric. We warned that the Korvax would eventually attack. The Council called us paranoid warmongers." She looked around the chamber. Many aliens looked away from her gaze. "Now you want us to save you from your own arrogance," Haewon continued. "You want us to send our sons and daughters to die in a war you created through incompetence. And when we refuse, you threaten us with sanctions." Voth's scales had turned almost black. "You will regret this decision, Ambassador. The Council has spoken. Then let me be clear in response, HFY said. Earth will provide humanitarian assistance, medical supplies, refugee support, food and water, but we will not send our military into your war. This decision is final. She sat down. Minsu was pale beside her, but he gave her a small nod of support. The Council voted on sanctions within the hour. 32 races voted in favor. Only 8 voted against, including Nira's people. Human trade routes were officially closed. Earth's merchant ships would be turned away from Council space. After the session ended, Nira found HFY in a side corridor. You should leave quickly, the Velrathi diplomat said. Her cat-like ears were flat against her head. Voth is furious. He will do something stupid. He already has, HFY replied. These sanctions will hurt the Council more than Earth. We'll just trade with the independent systems. Nira's tail twitched nervously. I don't mean economic actions. I mean something dangerous. He's desperate, and desperate people make terrible choices. HFY felt a chill run down her spine. Thank you for the warning, old friend. They parted ways, and HFY returned to her ship with Minsu. As they prepared to leave Council space, she sent an encrypted message to Earth Command. The warning was simple. Expect trouble. She was right to be worried. 3 days later, a human merchant convoy was traveling through neutral space. 20 civilian ships carried medicine, electronics, and agricultural equipment. They were heading to an independent colony that had no connection to the Council. The Korvax found them. 6 Korvax warships dropped out of hyperspace and surrounded the convoy. The merchant ship sent out distress calls immediately. They were unarmed and defenseless. A Council patrol was only 2 hours away. The merchants called for help. The Council fleet received the message clearly. They heard the screams as the Korvax opened fire. They did nothing. 20 human ships were destroyed. 3,000 civilians died in the cold vacuum of space. The attack took less than 15 minutes. The Council patrol arrived 4 hours later, claiming their communications had malfunctioned. When news reached Earth, the reaction was immediate and explosive. The planetary government convened emergency sessions. Military leaders demanded action. Citizens filled the streets in protest. Admiral Daewon Kim stood in Earth Command headquarters, watching the recovered footage from the merchant ship's final moments. The recording showed families desperately trying to reach escape pods. It showed ships breaking apart under weapons fire. It showed the Korvax warships methodically hunting down every survivor pod. And it showed the Council fleet's signal identifier on the edge of sensor range. They had been close enough to help. They had chosen not to respond. Daewon was 60 years old and had served in the military for 40 years. He had fought in Earth's colonial wars. He had seen death and suffering. But this cold-blooded abandonment of civilians made his blood boil. The President of Earth appeared on his screen. Admiral, begin mobilization. Full deployment. Yes, Madam President, Daewon replied. And Admiral, send a message to the Galactic Council. What message, ma'am? The President's face was hard as stone. Tell them they were warned. Within hours, Earth's military began activating reserve forces. Shipyards went to full production. Marines received deployment orders. 200 warships began preparations for departure. The Council had thought they were dealing with primitive newcomers. They had thought threats and intimidation would work. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral Daewon Kim stood in the command center of Earth's military headquarters, surrounded by holographic displays showing fleet positions across human space. Officers moved quickly between stations, coordinating the largest military deployment in Earth's history. Status report, Daewon ordered. Commander Taesung Choi, head of the Marine Corps, approached. He was a broad-shouldered man with scars on his face from years of combat. Sir, we have 40 ships ready to deploy immediately. Another 100 will be ready within the week. Marine divisions are mobilizing now. Not fast enough, Daewon muttered. He pulled up a star map showing the colony of New Haven. 30,000 humans lived there, farming and mining on a peaceful frontier world. Now, Korvax fleet movements suggested they were the next target. The Council is still refusing to apologize for the merchant massacre, said Dr. Subin Han, the military's chief strategist. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a brilliant mind. High Chancellor Voth released a statement calling it an unfortunate accident in disputed territory. Daewon's fists clenched. That space was neutral for 100 years before yesterday. The Council doesn't care about facts anymore, Subin replied. They're desperate. The Korvax conquered another system this morning. Voth needs someone to blame for his failures. An alarm sounded across the command center. A young officer called out, "Admiral! Emergency transmission from New Haven." Korvax fleet detected approaching their system. Everyone froze. Daewon felt his heart sink. "How many ships?" "Sensors show at least 50 warships, sir. They'll reach New Haven in 6 hours. What council forces are nearby?" Daewon demanded. The officer checked his displays. "A council patrol fleet is 3 hours away. 25 ships. Contact them immediately. Tell them to defend New Haven." 15 minutes later, the response came back. The council fleet was withdrawing. High Chancellor Voth had ordered all council military forces to avoid conflict with the Korvax unless directly defending council territory. New Haven was a human colony. It was humanity's problem. Daewon stared at the message in disbelief. They were abandoning 30,000 civilians to die. "Our nearest battle group is 3 days away," Taesung said grimly. "We can't reach them in time." "Check again," Daewon ordered. "Every ship. Someone must be closer." The officer searched frantically through the fleet registry. Then his eyes widened. "Sir, Captain Jiwoo Park's frigate is in the sector. The Indomitable is making a supply run to the Helios mining station. She's only 4 hours from New Haven." "One frigate against 50 Korvax warships," Subin whispered. "It's suicide." Daewon opened a communication channel. Captain Jiwoo Park's face appeared on the screen. She was 32 years old with short black hair and calm eyes. She had a reputation as one of the fleet's best tactical minds. "Captain Park, you've heard about New Haven?" "Yes, sir." "I'm already changing course. Jiwoo, listen to me carefully. I'm ordering you to evacuate as many civilians as possible and retreat." "Do not engage the Korvax fleet," Jiwoo smiled slightly. "Admiral, with respect, if I evacuate, the Korvax will destroy the colony infrastructure. Those people will have nothing to return to. And my ship can only carry 300 people. That leaves 29,700 to die." "Captain, I'm not running, sir. I'm buying time until the main fleet arrives. 3 days, correct?" Daewon wanted to order her to retreat, but he knew that look in her eyes. He had seen it in the mirror many times. "Correct. 3 days. Then I'll hold them for 3 days." Indomitable out, the screen went dark. Taesung shook his head. "She's going to get herself killed." "Maybe," Daewon said quietly. "Or maybe she'll show the galaxy what one human can do." He turned to his staff. "I want every available ship moving toward New Haven at maximum speed. Strip the home defense fleet if you have to, and get me President on the line. It's time to send a message to the Council." At New Haven, Governor Byung-ho received Captain Park's transmission with relief and terror mixed together. Relief that someone was coming to help. Terror at what was approaching his world. "Captain, we're not fighters here. We're farmers and miners." "Then arm them with mining equipment," Jiwoo replied. "Explosives, drilling lasers, anything that can hurt a Korvax soldier. I'm transmitting defensive plans now. Set up firing positions in the main settlement and the mine entrances." Jiwoo's tactical officer, Lieutenant Sang-ho, looked worried. "Captain, the Korvax Vanguard is entering the system." 12 ships. Only 12? Jiwoo smiled. "They're scouting. They don't know we're here yet." She studied the system carefully. New Haven sat near a dense asteroid field. The planet's 2 moons created useful gravity wells. The mining operations had left thousands of charges placed throughout the asteroid belt. "Sang-ho, start moving those mining charges. I want them positioned along the likely approach vectors. Can we remote detonate them?" "Yes, ma'am." "The miners use wireless triggers." "Perfect. Helm, take us into the asteroid field. Power down everything except life support and sensors. Make us look like a dead rock." The Indomitable slipped silently into the asteroid field. The crew worked frantically, repositioning mining charges and setting up false sensor readings. Jiwoo had learned these tactics during the colonial wars. Earth's forces had often been outnumbered and outgunned. They survived by being clever. The Korvax Vanguard approached confidently. Their ships were massive, covered in thick armor and bristling with weapons. They moved in a standard formation, textbook perfect amateurs, Jiwoo muttered. They've never fought an enemy who thinks differently. She waited until all 12 Korvax ships were deep in the asteroid field. Then she gave the order. "Detonate charges. All of them." Hundreds of mining explosives erupted simultaneously. The asteroids became deadly shrapnel, tearing through the Korvax formation. 3 ships exploded immediately. 4 more took critical damage. The remaining 5 tried to retreat, but Jiwoo was already moving. Full power. Hit them now! The Indomitable surged out of hiding, weapons blazing. Her missiles struck the damaged Korvax ships before they could raise shields. 2 more exploded. The last 3 managed to jump to hyperspace, fleeing the system. First blood to us, Sang-ho said with satisfaction. Don't celebrate yet, Jiwoo warned. They'll be back with the main fleet. And they'll be angry, she was right. 6 hours later, the full Korvax fleet arrived. 50 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. This time they were cautious. Jiwoo spent the next 36 hours running, hiding, and striking whenever she saw an opening. She used every trick she knew. False sensor signatures made the Korvax think they faced multiple ships. Precisely timed attacks on their supply vessels disrupted their formation. Mining lasers modified into makeshift weapons picked off isolated scouts. On New Haven's surface, Governor Byung-ho organized the civilian militia. Miners who had never fired a weapon in their lives learned to use military surplus rifles. Farmers set up defensive positions in their fields. Children were evacuated to underground shelters. The Korvax tried to land troops. Jiwoo hit their transports before they reached the surface. When a few did make it through, they met prepared civilians fighting for their homes. The Korvax had fought many battles, but they had never faced humans defending their families. Still, the numbers were overwhelming. Jiwoo's ship took hit after hit. Systems began failing. Her crew worked miracles keeping the engines running. Captain, forward shields are gone. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 4. We can't take much more, Sang-ho reported. Jiwoo checked the countdown. 28 hours since the battle began. The main fleet was still 2 days away. We hold, she said simply. But then Korvax sensors detected something. Ships were approaching from hyperspace. Lots of ships. The Korvax fleet prepared to face a massive human armada. Their commanders smiled, thinking they would finally crush these irritating humans. They were half right. Admiral Daewon Kim's fleet of 40 warships dropped into normal space. Across the system, Korvax fleet commanders laughed. 40 ships against their 50, with the humans already having fought for a day and a half. High Chancellor Voth was watching the battle from a council observation ship at the edge of the system. He wanted to see the humans humbled. Daewon's voice broadcast on all frequencies. This is Admiral Daewon Kim of Earth Fleet Command. You attacked our civilians. You invaded our territory. You wanted war. Here it is. The human fleet moved like nothing the Korvax had ever seen. Instead of the standard formation tactics used throughout the galaxy, they split into small groups. They used coordinated missile swarms that overwhelmed individual targets. They employed electronic warfare that blinded Korvax sensors. They struck and withdrew before the enemy could respond effectively. In the first 20 minutes, 15 Korvax ships were destroyed. In an hour, that number reached 40. The Korvax had superior numbers and firepower, but they had trained to fight other galactic civilizations. They had trained for honor and glory. They had never faced an enemy that fought to win at any cost. The surviving Korvax fleet retreated in disorder, jumping to hyperspace in panic. They left behind 35 destroyed warships and thousands of dead. New Haven was saved. On the Council observation ship, High Chancellor Voth stared at the battle results in stunned silence. Ambassador Nira stood beside him. Warlord Grath of the Korvax Empire sat on his command throne, watching the reports from the New Haven disaster. His 4 eyes narrowed in fury. The battle recording showed something he had never seen before in 300 years of conquest. Defeat. These humans destroyed 35 of our warships, he growled. His voice rumbled through the bridge like an earthquake. Grath was massive even by Korvax standards, standing nearly 3 meters tall. His gray skin was covered in scars from countless battles. How? His fleet commander, a smaller Korvax named Thok, trembled as he spoke. Their tactics are unlike anything in our databases, Warlord. They don't follow standard engagement protocols. They strike from multiple angles simultaneously. They target command ships first. They use weapons in combinations we never anticipated. Excuses. Grath slammed his fist into the armrest, cracking the metal. We outnumbered them. We had superior firepower. Yes, Warlord. But they didn't fight like the Council races. The Council species value honor in combat. They announce their attacks. They follow rules of engagement. The humans have no such concerns. They fight to destroy us as quickly as possible using any method that works. Grath stood and walked to the tactical display. It showed the entire warfront. His empire had conquered 12 systems from the Council. Victory had seemed inevitable. Now this new factor had appeared. Redirect all operations, Grath ordered. The Council can wait. These humans are now our primary enemy. I want 40% of our fleet moved to human-controlled space. We will crush them before they become a real threat. Thok hesitated. Warlord, that will ease pressure on the Council. They may use the time to rebuild their defenses. The Council is weak and incompetent. They are no threat. But these humans? They are dangerous. We eliminate dangerous enemies first. Across the galaxy, the Korvax fleet began its movement. 200 warships turned away from Council territory and headed toward human space. For the Council races watching this shift, it brought temporary relief. Their worlds would not be attacked for a while. High Chancellor Voth held an emergency session to discuss this development. Many representatives celebrated, claiming their alliance with the humans had created a strategic advantage. Ambassador Nira listened to the speeches with growing disgust. Finally, she stood to speak. There is no alliance, she said sharply. The humans are fighting the war we dragged them into. They're fighting because we sanctioned them and abandoned their civilians to die, and now we celebrate while they face the full fury of the Korvax Empire alone. Voth's scales darkened. The humans chose to escalate. We escalated! Nira's fur stood on end. We demanded their help. When they refused, we punished them. When their civilians were massacred, we called it an accident. We created this situation through our arrogance and incompetence. Other representatives began shouting. Some agreed with Nira. Most defended the Council's actions. The argument raged for hours. Meanwhile, in Earth Command, Admiral Day-Wan reviewed the intelligence reports about Korvax fleet movements. Dr. Subin stood beside him, manipulating holographic displays. 200 ships, she said quietly. That's twice what we have available. Can we build more ships quickly enough? Not before they arrive. Shipyards are working around the clock, but new warships take months to complete. Day-Wan studied the tactical situation. A direct battle would be suicide. The Korvax had numbers, firepower, and centuries of military experience. But they also had weaknesses. They've never lost before, Day-Wan said thoughtfully. Not really. Oh, they've had setbacks, but never a true defeat. That makes them overconfident. How does that help us? Overconfident enemies make mistakes. They assume they know what we'll do. They expect us to fight the way everyone else fights. Day-Wan smiled coldly. We're going to teach them a lesson about assumptions. He called in Commander Tae-sung and Captain Ji-woo, who had been promoted after her heroic stand at New Haven. Together, they developed a plan. We can't win a straight fight, Day-Wan explained, so we don't fight straight. We hit their supply lines. We destroy their communication relays. We strike their isolated squadrons and retreat before reinforcements arrive. We make them chase us through systems where we have every advantage. Guerrilla warfare, Ji-woo said with approval. We did this during the colonial wars. It works. It also takes time, Tae-sung added, and our colonies will be vulnerable while we play cat and mouse. Then we evacuate the most exposed colonies, temporarily. Once we've weakened the Korvax fleet enough, we'll take back everything they touch. The strategy was implemented immediately. Human colonies along the frontier began evacuating civilians to safer systems. Military outposts turned into traps rigged with explosives and automated weapons. Supply caches were hidden in places only humans knew about. When the Korvax fleet arrived in human space, they found empty worlds and silent stations. At first, they thought the humans were simply fleeing. Then the attacks began. A Korvax supply convoy carrying fuel and ammunition exploded as it passed through what seemed like empty space. Hidden human mines had been drifting in the shipping lane for days. A communication relay that coordinated Korvax fleet movements suddenly went offline. Investigation teams found human commandos had infiltrated the station, sabotaged the systems, and disappeared before anyone noticed. A squadron of 12 Korvax warships stopped to refuel at a captured human station. The station's computer systems had been reprogrammed. Automated defenses activated and the station itself detonated like a massive bomb. All 12 ships were destroyed. Warlord Grath watched his carefully planned invasion turn into chaos. His forces couldn't find the main human fleet. Every advance cost him ships and supplies. His commanders grew nervous and frustrated. Where are they? Grath demanded. Everywhere and nowhere, Warlord, Thok replied. Our scouts report human ships in a dozen systems. But when we send forces to engage, the humans vanish. They attack our weak points and avoid our strong ones. The turning point came at the Battle of Korvax Frontier Station. This was a massive military base that coordinated operations across 3 systems. It housed 10,000 Korvax troops and served as a repair facility for damaged ships. Commander Tae-sung led the assault personally. His plan was audacious and insane in equal measure. Instead of attacking from outside, he would strike from within. 3 human transport ships approached the station pretending to be captured vessels. The Korvax had started taking human ships as prizes, so it wasn't unusual. These particular ships carried Tae-sung and 500 Marines hidden in smuggling compartments that blocked sensors. The Korvax allowed the ships to dock. They planned to strip them for useful technology. Instead, 500 heavily armed humans poured out of hidden compartments and into the station's corridors. The fighting was brutal. Humans and Korvax battled at close range in the narrow hallways. The Korvax were larger and stronger, but humans were faster and more adaptable. Tae-sung's Marines used tactics that seemed savage to the Korvax. They used the station's own environment as a weapon, venting atmosphere in some sections and overloading power conduits in others. In 4 hours of bloody combat, the Marines captured the station's command center. Tae-sung personally arrested the base commander and claimed the station for Earth. The galaxy watched in shock. Galactic warfare doctrine said you destroyed enemy installations or surrounded them until they surrendered. You didn't board them with ground troops and fight room by room. That was considered primitive and barbaric, but it worked. High Chancellor Voth called another emergency session. This time the tone was very different. The humans are fighting without honor, a bird-like representative screeched. They attack supply lines instead of military targets. They use traps and ambushes instead of proper engagements. They captured a station through ground assault. This is uncivilized. Ambassador Hae-won had been invited to observe. She stood and faced the chamber. You call us uncivilized? Her voice was cold. You started this war. You sanctioned us when we refused to die for you. You abandoned our civilians. Now you criticize how we defend ourselves? There are rules of warfare, Voth hissed. Rules you made. Rules designed to protect your comfortable way of fighting. We never agreed to your rules. You dragged us into your war. You don't get to choose how we fight it. Nira spoke up again. Ambassador Lee is correct. The Council created this situation. We have no moral authority to condemn human tactics. The argument raged, but it didn't matter. The war was evolving beyond the Council's control. In Korvax space, Warlord Grath made a decision. These humans were too dangerous to be fought with restraint. He would mobilize the entire Korvax Empire, every ship, every soldier. Total war. 800 warships began converging on human space. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. When Admiral Dae-won received the intelligence reports, he felt a chill. His entire fleet numbered only 200 ships. The odds were 4-1 against them. Dr. Subin stood beside him analyzing the data. We can't win this, can we? Dae-won was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled grimly. We can't win a fair fight. Good thing we've never fought fair. He called his senior staff together. Captain Jiwoo arrived from her ship. Commander Tae-sung came from the Marine Training Facility. Other fleet commanders joined via holographic link. The Korvax Armada advanced through space like a steel tide. 800 warships moved in perfect formation, filling sensor screens with their massive presence. Warlord Grath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Conqueror, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. The humans cannot hide from this, he declared. We will sweep through their territory system by system. Every colony will be conquered, every ship destroyed. They will learn what it means to challenge the Korvax Empire. His fleet commanders echoed their agreement. The galactic observers stationed safely at system edges transmitted the footage across known space. The council representatives watched nervously. Some began preparing messages to the Korvax, offering to negotiate peace terms on humanity's behalf. Only Ambassador Nira seemed worried for a different reason. They're walking into a trap, she told her aide. I don't know what the humans have planned, but 800 ships advancing in formation like that? It's exactly what Admiral Kim wants them to do. She was right. Admiral Dae-won Kim watched the Korvax fleet from his command center and felt no fear. He felt something else. Anticipation. They're moving exactly as predicted, Dr. Subin reported. Standard conquest formation 3 waves. They expect to engage our main fleet in the Horizon system. Of course they do. That's what every species does. You defend your capital systems with your strongest forces. Daewon smiled coldly. Send the order. Begin Operation Phantom. Throughout human space, 200 warships received their instructions. Not one of them moved toward the Horizon system. Instead, they scattered in dozens of different directions. Small groups of 3 or 4 ships began appearing deep in Korvax territory, far behind the advancing armada. The first target was a fuel depot that supplied Korvax ships across 5 systems. 6 human ships appeared without warning, launched their missiles, and jumped to hyperspace before any defense could respond. The depot exploded, destroying enough fuel to supply 100 warships for a month. An hour later, 3 human ships struck an ammunition factory. Hundreds of Korvax workers died as the facility erupted in secondary explosions that continued for days. Then human commandos infiltrated a communication hub that coordinated fleet movements. They didn't destroy it immediately. Instead, they reprogrammed it to send false orders. Korvax ships began receiving instructions to move to wrong locations, reported enemy positions that didn't exist, and found supply convoys that had been redirected elsewhere. Warlord Grath received reports of attacks from a dozen systems simultaneously. All of them were far from the front lines. All of them targeted infrastructure rather than military forces. This is cowardice, Grath roared. They attack our supplies while refusing to face us in battle. Warlord, we must send ships back to defend our territory, Thok urged. If they continue destroying our logistics, the fleet won't be able to sustain operations. No. We continue the advance. The supply problems are temporary. Once we conquer their core systems, we can rebuild. But the problems weren't temporary. Every day brought new attacks. Human ships appeared like ghosts, struck vital targets, and vanished before Korvax forces could respond. The massive armada continued its advance, but it moved slower as fuel became scarce. Weapons ran low on ammunition. Repair facilities that should have been available were smoking ruins. On the Council observation ships, military analysts watched in amazement. They're not fighting the Korvax fleet at all, one Threxian observer clicked. They're fighting the Korvax Empire's ability to wage war. It's brilliant, Nira said, and ruthless. Every attack is perfectly calculated for maximum strategic impact. High Chancellor Voth watched the reports with growing unease. The humans were demonstrating military capabilities far beyond anything in Council records. If they could do this to the Korvax, what could they do to the Council? The thought made his scales itch with fear. Captain Jiwoo Park commanded one of the human raiding groups. Her squadron of 4 ships had penetrated deep into Korvax space, striking 3 targets in 2 days. Now they approached their most ambitious objective yet. That's the Korvax Central Supply Hub, her tactical officer Sang-ho reported. It coordinates resource distribution across their entire empire. Destroying it would cripple their logistics for months. It's also defended by 20 warships, Jiwoo noted. 4 against 20. I like those odds. Her crew laughed nervously. They had learned to trust their captain's crazy plans. The supply hub orbited a gas giant in a system filled with electromagnetic interference from the planet's massive magnetic field. This interference made sensors unreliable, perfect for an ambush. Jiwoo's squadron approached with powered-down systems drifting like debris. The Korvax defenders detected nothing unusual. Why would they? No enemy had ever penetrated this deep into their territory before. Launch missiles on my mark, Jiwoo whispered. All of them. We won't get a second chance. Her 4 ships carried 96 missiles total. At her signal, all 96 launched simultaneously. They activated only when already halfway to their targets, giving the Korvax defenders less than 30 seconds to respond. Chaos erupted around the supply hub. Korvax ships tried to intercept the missiles while simultaneously searching for the attackers. They failed at both tasks. 70 missiles reached their targets. The supply hub and 4 defending ships exploded in spectacular fashion. Jiwoo's squadron had already jumped to hyperspace before the wreckage stopped expanding. 3 days later, the Korvax armada reached the Horizon system, where they expected to fight the decisive battle. The system was empty. Not a single human ship waited for them. The planets were evacuated. Even the orbital stations had been stripped of anything useful. Where are they? Grath demanded. Warlord, we're receiving reports from across the Empire. Human attacks have intensified. They've destroyed 17 major facilities in the last day alone. Our supply lines are breaking down. Find their main fleet. We can't, Warlord. They're not operating as a fleet anymore. They've split into small groups attacking hundreds of targets simultaneously. For the first time in his long military career, Warlord Grath felt something unfamiliar. Doubt Admiral Day-Wan monitored the campaign from Earth Command. The strategy was working better than he had hoped. The Korvax fleet was still massive and dangerous, but it was like a giant beast slowly starving to death. Commander Taesung requests permission for Operation Bear Trap, Dr. Subin reported. Day-Wan nodded. Approved. It's time to bloody their nose. Operation Bear Trap was designed to eliminate a significant portion of the Korvax fleet in a single engagement. The plan was complex and required perfect timing. It was also extremely dangerous. The bait was simple. Human intelligence accidentally leaked information about a major fleet gathering in the binary star system of Helios. The leak suggested 100 human warships would be meeting there for refueling and repairs. The Korvax took the bait immediately. Grath sent 400 ships to the Helios system. He would finally corner the human fleet and destroy them. What the Korvax didn't know was that Helios was a trap. The binary star system was naturally unstable, prone to massive stellar flares that could overload shields and damage unprotected ships. The human fleet gathering was actually a sophisticated holographic projection created by unmanned satellites. The Korvax fleet entered the system confidently. Their sensors detected what appeared to be dozens of human ships clustered near the refueling station. Grath ordered the attack. That's when the stars erupted. The binary stars had been carefully monitored by human scientists for months. They knew exactly when the next major flare would occur. The timing was perfect. As the Korvax fleet advanced, both stars released massive bursts of radiation and electromagnetic energy. Korvax shields, designed for combat rather than stellar phenomena, overloaded immediately. Ships found their defensive systems failing, their sensors blinded, their communications jammed by the natural interference. And that's when 100 real human warships dropped out of hyperspace at every exit point from the system. The Korvax fleet was trapped. Their shields were weakened by stellar radiation. Their sensors barely functioned. Their communication network was chaos, and human forces surrounded them with clear firing solutions. The battle lasted 3 hours. It was less a battle and more an execution. Korvax ships tried to fight, tried to retreat, tried to do anything but die. Most failed. 250 Korvax warships were destroyed or crippled beyond repair. Another 100 took severe damage. Only 50 ships escaped, running for their lives in random directions. Commander Taesung led boarding parties onto several crippled Korvax vessels. On the largest, he found Warlord Grath himself, trapped in the wreckage of his command throne. "You fight without honor," Grath growled, "even in defeat." "We fight to win," Taesung replied. "There's a difference." He gestured to his Marines. "Secure him. Warlord Grath is now a prisoner of war." On the Council observation ship stationed safely outside the Helios system, absolute silence reigned. The observers had just watched a single battle that changed the strategic balance of the entire war. High Chancellor Voth stared at the recordings with something approaching terror. The human victory wasn't just militarily significant. It was psychologically devastating. They had turned the Korvax empires. The Korvax Empire's new military council sat in their emergency chamber on the homeworld of Corvinus Prime. Without Warlord Grath, they had no clear chain of command. Generals argued with admirals. Colonial governors demanded different strategies. The empire that had conquered 12 systems in 6 months was falling apart in days. Finally, Grand Admiral Vork, the highest-ranking military officer still free, called for silence. "We have lost this war," he said quietly. The words were like poison in his mouth. 250 ships destroyed at Helios. Our supply networks in ruins. Our warlord captured. And the humans? They continue attacking our infrastructure with impunity. Every day we fight, we grow weaker. You speak of surrender? A younger officer stood, his gray skin flushed dark with anger. "The Korvax Empire has never surrendered." "Then we will be the first," Fork replied. "Or we will be destroyed completely. Those are our only choices." The vote was close, but realism won over pride. The Korvax Empire sent a formal request for peace negotiations to Earth. Admiral Daewon Kim read the message with mixed feelings. Victory had come at a cost. 45 human ships destroyed. 12,000 casualties. Every loss weighed on him. But they had won. Against overwhelming odds, humanity had won. The Council is requesting a seat at the peace negotiations, Dr. Subin reported. High Chancellor Voth claims they have a right to participate since the war affected their territory. Daewon's expression hardened. Send a reply. Tell the Council this is not their war. They just started it. Peace will be negotiated between Earth and the Korvax Empire. The Council can watch from the sidelines where they belong. Ambassador Haewon Lee delivered that message to the Galactic Council personally. She stood in the Grand Chamber, facing the assembled representatives, and spoke with ice in her voice. The Council demanded Earth's military assistance. We refused. You sanctioned us. You abandoned our civilians to die. You celebrated when the Korvax turned their fleet against us, thinking it relieved pressure on your territories. She looked around the chamber, meeting alien eyes. You wanted us to fight your war. We fought it, we won it. Now you want to negotiate terms that benefit you? No, High Chancellor Voth's scales darkened. You cannot exclude the Council from, we can and we will. Haewon cut him off. Earth is withdrawing from Council membership. This decision is final. We will negotiate individual treaties with species who wish to maintain relations with us, but we will never again place ourselves under the Council's authority. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Representatives shouted, some in anger, others in fear. The Council had existed for 10,000 years. No species had ever left voluntarily. Ambassador Nira stood amid the noise. Ambassador Lee is correct. The Council failed catastrophically. We allowed our arrogance and incompetence to drag innocent humans into a war they tried to avoid. We have no moral authority to demand anything from Earth. The negotiations between Earth and the Korvax Empire took place on a neutral station. Admiral Daewon led the human delegation. He brought Captain Jiwoo Park and Commander Taesung Choi with him. The Korvax sent Grand Admiral Vork and a diplomatic team. Also present in chains was Warlord Grath. The humans wanted him there to face the consequences of his actions. Daewon laid out Earth's terms. They were harsh but not unreasonable. First, the Korvax military will be reduced by 80%. You will keep enough ships to defend your territory but not enough to threaten others. That leaves us vulnerable to attack. Vork protested. You should have thought of that before attacking everyone else, Daewon replied coldly. Second, all territory conquered from the Council will be returned immediately. Third, the Korvax Empire will pay reparations to both human and Council victims of this war. Our economy cannot support such payments. Then your economy will suffer until the debt is paid. You started this war. You bear the consequences. Daewon pulled up a holographic document. Fourth, human monitoring stations will be established in Korvax space for 50 years. We will ensure compliance with these terms. You wish to occupy our territory? We wish to ensure you never do this again. Consider it parole. Daewon's voice was like iron. Fifth, Warlord Grath and his senior commanders will be put on trial for war crimes. They ordered the massacre of unarmed civilians. They targeted refugee ships. They committed atrocities on conquered worlds. They will face justice. Grath, sitting in his chains, finally spoke. I am a military leader. I followed the traditions of conquest that the Korvax have practiced for centuries. Then your centuries of tradition are ending today, Commander Taesung said. Targeting civilians is not military strategy. It's murder. You will answer for your crimes. The negotiations lasted 3 days. The Korvax tried to soften some terms, but the humans were unmovable. Finally, Grand Admiral Vork signed the treaty. The war was officially over, but Admiral Daewon had one more task to complete. He called for an assembly of the full Galactic Council. This time, humans did not come as supplicants asking for a seat. They came as victors demanding to be heard. The Grand Chamber was full. Every council species sent representatives. The galactic media broadcast the event across known space. High Chancellor Voth sat on his throne, trying to project authority he no longer possessed. Admiral Daewon Kim walked to the center platform. He wore his full military uniform, decorated with medals from the war. Captain Jiwoo and Commander Taesung flanked him. Ambassador Haewon stood with them, representing Earth's diplomatic corps. Daewon began to speak, and his voice carried across the chamber with absolute authority. 50 years ago, humanity joined the Galactic Council with hope. We believed we would find friendship, knowledge, and cooperation among the stars. Instead, we found arrogance, entitlement, and contempt. Some representatives shifted uncomfortably. Others tried to protest, but Daiwan continued. For 50 years, Earth offered to share our knowledge, our military training, our strategic insights. Every offer was rejected. You called us primitive. You called us violent. You said our methods were uncivilized. He paused, letting the words sink in. But when you faced an enemy you could not defeat, you demanded our help. And when we refused to die for your mistakes, you punished us. High Chancellor Voth tried to speak. The Council acted in the interest of... The Council acted in its own interest, as always, Daiwan cut him off. You sanctioned Earth's trade. You abandoned our civilians to be massacred. You celebrated when the Korvax turned their fleet against us because it gave you temporary relief. You are cowards and opportunists. The chamber erupted in angry shouts. Daiwan waited for silence, his face showing no emotion. Let me be clear about what happened in this war. The Korvax Empire fielded 800 warships. They had superior numbers, superior firepower, and centuries of military experience. Earth fielded 200 ships and won decisively. We destroyed or crippled over 400 Korvax vessels. We captured their supreme military leader. We broke their empire's will to fight. He pulled up holographic displays showing battle statistics. The numbers were undeniable. We did this because we fight differently than you. We adapt, we innovate. We do whatever it takes to win. You call our tactics uncivilized? We call them effective. Daiwan's voice hardened. You wanted us to save you from the Korvax. Instead, we saved ourselves. And in doing so, we saved your territories by drawing the Korvax fleet away from your worlds. Ambassador Nira stood. Admiral Kim speaks truth. The Council owes humanity a debt we cannot repay. Daiwan turned to face her. Ambassador Nira, your species and a few others showed wisdom and friendship during this crisis. Earth will remember that. We will offer bilateral treaties to those species who wish to maintain relations with us based on mutual respect. He turned back to face Voth. As for the Council itself, Earth is withdrawing our membership permanently. We will not participate in your politics. We will not attend your assemblies. We will not pretend that this organization serves any purpose beyond protecting the interests of ancient, stagnant civilizations. You cannot, Voth began. We can, and we have. Haywan said firmly. The treaty has already been filed. Earth is no longer a council member. Daiwan walked closer to Voth's throne, looking up at the High Chancellor. Let me give you one final warning. Earth fought this war with mercy. We could have destroyed the Korvax Empire completely. We could have wiped out their civilization as punishment for attacking our civilians. We chose not to because we believe in justice, not genocide. He let that sink in for a moment, but if the Council, or any Council species, ever threatens Earth or our allies again, we will not show the same mercy. We have proven we can defeat the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Imagine what we could do if we stopped holding back. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Fear was a physical presence. Stay away from us, Daiwan said quietly. Let us live in peace, and never ever try to drag us into your wars again. He turned and walked out of the chamber. His delegation followed. Behind them, the Galactic Council sat in stunned silence, finally understanding what they had created. 3 months later, Captain Jiwoo Park stood on the observation deck of a human monitoring station, orbiting a Korvax world. She watched supply ships moving carefully through approved traffic lanes.